Sorry, team. I think I forgot to do the recording. So if I start again, I think so. Our today's agenda, as I said, will be on these topics. Okay, the governance framework, the AI trust layer, the context grounding data flow, and we'll see how do we set up the AI trust layer. Okay, in general, just on a high level. So again, I'll try to walk. I'll be trying you to walk through the governance framework. So this governance framework in general, you can think this is actually built to build your trust so that you can transition from the traditional RPA automation to the agentic automation or the AI agent automation, you can tell. So in general, again, it is only to make sure we develop the trust in the individuals or the organizations to make sure all these automation or the driven agents are secure, means they are controlled and they're compliant. Okay. So the first layer when we're talking about the agentic governance is the UiPath basically is emphasizing on the guardrails. Okay. So you can see now in the guardrails again you have something called as agent guardrails. So here basically we are trying to define what an agent can do and what it cannot do. So you are setting the limits, what the agent can do and cannot do. So if you think this is something similar to like setting the boundaries in the AI center, and you can even set these boundaries in the autopilot. We have autopilot, right? I think there also on the things we can set up what it can do and what it cannot do. So it's like basically we are setting up the boundaries to an individual that he can do this and he cannot do this. Same thing we are setting up in the agents also. The next point comes on the data access policies. Now, you know what our policies are. Policies means you're defining what data agents can access. So we are setting up the control whether what an agent should be able to access and what it should not be accessed. So you're basically setting up the limit. Like if you have an assume this is an employee in an organization, you see based on the band of the individual, the the individual can access the so much sensitive level information in the system. Like for example, you take an CEO has control over the entire operation or entire data accessible to the of all the employees to the CEO, right? So similarly, if there's a normal employee joining in a company, he'll not have that so much level of control. You can think this is often corporate laptops where you cannot do anything apart from what you've been accessed, what have you been permission. For example, even if you have to download any other new application, you cannot do it, right? So in the same way, we are designing, we are setting up a policy what agent can access and what it should not access. So you can think this is you can think of the example of an orchestrator also, okay, right? Based on the roles, we can decide who can download an item from the storage bucket or who can do what on the orchestrator. So same way, we're defining a policy here to the agent also, we can give that. Okay, makes sense, right? So next thing you can see is it is safety monitoring. So it is not like we can just deploy the bot and leave it forever, right? So we will see, we will have to monitor the process. We'll have to monitor the agent, what he's doing, what he's not doing, on what scenario, what he's doing. So basically, UiPath can here provide the logging. UiPath can give you alerts, and UiPath can give you insights. We can plug this onto the insight dashboard, and we can see on what is happening. So in this way, we can monitor our agents also. So this is also another important feature which we'll be using in the agentic governance. Okay. So next comes your NL policy design. So NL means natural language policy design. So here is the place we'll make sure whatever the prompt, right? Whatever the prompt we are giving for that, what AI is giving you the answer. So basically the interaction. So we have to make sure these things, right? This communication is following the governance rules. So what we are setting up, right? So we have to make sure that Again, it is something like similar to a corporate laptop. Okay, you think you cannot browse anything and you cannot do anything, right? So there are many things restricted for the things. So same way you can control your agent also, right? You will make sure whatever the prompts, whatever the interaction, what you're getting from the bot is also as per the governance. So I think this will be a this will play a very important key factor when you're setting up the agentic CEO in your organization. So this will be very useful. Okay. So next comes your project guardian. So if you think project guardian, as the name suggests, right? So he's the person who is guarding the agents. So you can think this as a person similar to a solution architect. Okay. So how the solution architect plays the roles in the traditional automation, right? In the same way, here the project guardian is uh, similar to the person who is handling the roles uh, of all the solution architect, and he'll make sure all the governance policies set by the organization or the UiPath are followed. Okay, so you can see now all of these, you can apply in general to all of your things like the agentic processes, the RPA workflows, the API workflows, the agents and all. So all of this unit, this will get applied to on a high level. So in general, these governance, no, whatever we are doing is consistent in general everywhere. So this is consistent. This will apply good for the agentic also. This will apply for the RPA as well. This will apply for the API, and all together it will appear. Okay. So the second layer in our governance framework would be the IT governance. So as we discussed, I think we have seen much examples when we are discussing IT governance. So IT governance is the person or the department where who will decide or ensure what is being controlled, what is being visible, and who is accountable for what reason, right? So you can think of an example. As I said, you want to install a new application. uh, you're working on UiPath, assume, okay, and you want to get the UiPath installed and get the Python installed in the system. So if you're working in corporate, I think you all know you cannot directly download any UiPath software. Again, you require admin, right? So admin is the one who will come up with without his consent, you cannot download anything. So this is again very similar to the UiPath. So in the UiPath also, it's the same thing. In the identity, how we are managing the identity in the UiPath, we are managing it using the orchestrator. Say you can integrate your Active Directory here, or you can have your Azure ID also integrated here, and you can set up the identity. So in this way, you can control the identity. Then second comes your audits and logs. So audits and the logs are very crucial, which is very important. So here in the governance also, we will use logs for every bot action, for every logging and everything, which is basically the critical key point, because without the audits and the logs, we cannot trace back what is happening, right? So this will play a very important role here. So audit and the logs. Next, speaking on the data governance, same way, data. So here we are managing how data is stored, how the data will be processed, and what amount of data should be accessed. Especially, you can think of document understanding and the AI use cases. Here we can set up, right? So if we have some internal documents or the internal invoices, internal POs, we can set up how this data is getting stored, and who will be able to access this, and how the level of permission should be granted so that it can be processed by only the UiPath team. So all this setup we can control here, so as to how it is stored, how it is processed, and who is going to access what and all. So you can think here again as an example of a document understanding, and you can think of the AI center also here. Okay. So and the next thing, the next very important block in the IT governance would be our the folder level RBAC controls. So RBAC is basically role-based access, I think, yeah, role-based access controls. Okay. So here here is the place where you can define what permission at what folder level and at what tenant level. Basically, on the tenant level, inside a tenant, on what particular subfolder you need to give the access. So in this way, we can delegate the required access, the required control to the particular person. We can manage that here, okay, in the IT governance. So the next part would be our delegation of admin. So the admin again plays a very important role here, right? So we can design what a business what a business analyst should be able to access, what a developer should be able to access, what a support person should be able to access. We can segregate the duties. So if you see in the last session on the automation hub, we had the control. We can see who can see the design, who can create the who can access your orchestrator, who can access your AI center, and all of these things we can control, right? Here, the admin, same way, here we can delegate different roles based on the admin, based on the developer, based on the solution architect, and we can delegate the roles here. So, in general, if I want to summarize this layer, this will make sure whatever the automation or whatever the agent you use or you deploy in the system is all traceable, who is accountable, and how what level it is being controlled. So in general, we can ensure the control, we can see who is accountable, and we can trace it back. So nothing but the visibility. Okay, I hope I'm making it sense. So our third layer in the governance framework is called as infra governance. Okay, so this infra governance, right? You can tell this as the foundation. Okay, so this is the foundation here, because here we will make sure how we are securing everything under everything here. So here is the place we are making sure how things are getting secure underneath. So this is something like the below the table. Okay, usually once you set up, you don't think of this, right? So at the end, but how you're setting up initially, right? It tells everything. For example, you think about the data residency. So here's the place you're deciding where your data will reside, like Europe or US. We have the data centers, right? All they were. We have two to three categories. So we are deciding where our data is sitting, basically. So this will be very important when you're coming when it comes to the compliance. Like if you come to the Gulf, you have a data center there, and they don't want their data to be visible out of the Gulf, right? So that's one thing. Then you come back to the US, you come back to the Europe region, because here the organization has full control whether where they want to host their data. So this is on the data residency. You can even set up the network boundary, right? So you can set up using it. You can use VPNs. You can have your own private endpoints, and you can secure the connectivity so that it is secure. So you can set up based on your organization, you can set up the boundary, you can set up the wall. How do you want your data to reside? So you can control again here. So next, if you see, it's the data encryption. Okay. So data encryption, again, UiPath basically supports encryption at rest. You can do the encryption in the rest stage, or you can in the transit also you can do it. You can have all your customer data as a managed keys, and you can set up this based on the encryption how you want. So it can support you all level hash core, whatever the encryption you want. I think we can have that. So based on the top level encryption, you can set up that. Then next comes the security hardening. Okay, so here, so basically you can think this as your robot machines. You can think about your servers. You can think about all the cloud environments you're using in the setup. You can see what level of security you can provide. You can use it in a set trace. You can set up any level of security what you would like, so that it is secure, so that anything cannot break, anyone outside the organization cannot break this wall. So you have the free hand, based on the standards you can set it this also. Okay, then next comes your industry or country specific component. as I said, UiPath basically complies with the standards like we have I think UiPath is ISO certified. It is also SOS2 certified, and I think it is HIPAA certified also. So based on the type your deployment, you can set up this layer. Okay. So again, if I tell you, as I told you, this is the base layer, everything. I think without this layer, right? If you're not using this layer, all of your automation is again risky, right? So if your data is not secure, it can be accessed from anywhere, anyone can access, then there's no point. So so this is the base layer, but it's also a very important layer. Okay. Without this layer, I think all of your agents, I think the traditional automation, everything, it's like we are ready to compromise. So I think the more amount of interest, the more amount of foundation, or the more amount of uh, the thing you spend on this, I think will make your environment, will make your setup more secure, and it will make your more your organization, or your all your complete setup, right, more secure. So in general, if you see, I think these are all our the core principles. The trust, you can, based on the design, you can trust, and it is giving you the complete visibility and the complete accountability, right? So in general, we are putting always here the security first concern. It's always the security first and always the compliance. Okay. So when these three layers come together, right, I think you can think now. Now you have seen the agentic governance, you have seen the IT governance, you have also seen the infra governance. When all of these three layers, right, when they come together, so that is your agentic, your IT, and your infra, that is when I think this together, you can see, right, the icon here. So agentic, IT, and infra, this is when our strong shield, we're getting a strong shield of governance. You can think this shield similar to a Captain America, right? Captain America has a shield, right? So it protects him from all the harms. And similarly, I think we can think this as a shield. So agentic, IT, and infra. So if I summarize again, here we can see agents will act responsibility. We are making sure in the IT level that systems are secure. And in infra, we'll see how the organizations are compliant. So I think this is the same exact way UiPath positions all the enterprise grade automations. So in general, putting all the trust at this scale, right? So, and that is how, based on these things, we can confidently scale from the traditional automation, the RPA, to the agentic automation using the UiPath. So again, in simple terms, if I tell you, this framework will make sure automation is becoming smarter, becomes more safer, and also it is more controlled, and we are all enterprise ready. Okay. So going back on the UiPath, now we'll discuss on something on the AI trust layer architecture. Okay. So so if you see the diagram here, right, you can see how I think we can you see the numbers here? I think it's here. It's fine. Okay. Now speaking on the AI trust layer. Okay. So we were discussing we are discussing on the trust boundary, but initially before that, I want to see you on the left side. See here you have on the left side something called as UiPath products and the services. So you have a list of components here of the UiPath, right? You can see the agent builder, you can see the AI autopilot, you have communication mining, you have document mining, test manager, apps, marketplace, studio web, the desktop, ACR, serverless, and all the Gen AI activities and the connectors. So before we speak on I think all these levels of products, right? These are the entry points before we actually step in the AI trust layer. Before I explain this, see, you can think these as all the inputs, okay, or the entry points before we can move to the AI trust layer. So AI trust layer. So see, whenever we want to use any of this agent builder, autopilot, or any of these things, you can all of these now require AI, right? So they need AI capabilities basically. So in general, right, they will not directly call any LLM like how ChatGPT, they don't call anything directly. That's a concept. So it has to, before it makes a call, right, it has to pass through a layer, okay? It has to pass through a layer, which here we are calling it as the UiPath trust layer, okay? So in general, you can think you have an input, you have an output. So it is not directly going, it's something like you enter something on a chat gpt, you get an answer directly, right? But here you can think whatever you're giving the request to the AI agents here or the autopilot, it is not directly going to the LLM, it is not directly communicating there, it has to go through a trust layer. Okay, so here we are naming this as a UiPath trust layer. So here whatever you're asking, it is going through a controlled layer. Okay, and then it will give you the output. Now we will see what is actually happening in the trust layer. Okay, so this you can think as a LLM gateway. Okay, here this is the LLM gateway. Okay, so basically it's something like a control tower. So you ask someone for something, there is someone sitting on the control layer. He will decide on how he has to direct the traffic and how it has to be masked and then given. So if we are using any proxies and all, then we will decide that. Okay. So this UiPath trust layer LLM gateway, this is acting like a central API layer that will standardize all your AI calls. So all your AI calls will be standardized and then sent. Okay. So it can be your normalized chat. It can be your embeddings if you want to give any attachments, that one also. And here comes a very important thing like if you have to mask your data and then send it to the and organize or the LLM, right, so that your data is not exposed. So that's something called as PII detection. I think we'll discuss here at the end what is the PII detection, normalized chat, the embeddings, PII detection, and we'll also see whether we are authorized to call this API call, right? So we have to see, right? For example, if you're asking anything in the chat GPT, you have a subscription, only then it will allow you, or else it will not allow you, right? So similarly, whether if you're authentic, if you're authorized and you're authenticated, only then it will allow you. That's again another parameter. Then we can even limit the rate of the calls we are taking. For example, it should not happen that your ID is misused and it keeps on calling multiple calls and you are exhausted. So you can limit the rates again here on the UiPath Russell. We can control that. So in general, all the governance and the audit logs and everything we can maintain here. We can decide how the governance can be set and all the logs. So in general, in these LLM gateway, we are ensuring how the agents or the automations, we can set up the governance and trace it. Okay. So that comes in the LLM gateway. So speaking on the context grounding, so context grounding is the one which will help you to improve the quality of the responses. Like here, context grounding, you can think this as a okay. You think you have purchased any mobile phone. Okay, you will get a user manual or the knowledge base of the document, right? So next time if you want to know what is the guarantee level, what is the warranty and whatever it is, so you can instruct your LLM whatever the information I'm asking you, whatever the questions I'm asking you, you need to limit all your queries only to this particular knowledge base or only to this particular document and answer me everything from there. So basically, you can add your business contacts and you can add your knowledge base here. Okay. So basically, using the semantic search, in this way, you can use your context surrounding. So here you will get all your RAGs also. So the retrieval augmented generations and all these responses. So you can set up that it is not just generic, it should not be just generic and should be business relevant. So you can set up all the controls and that setup thing, all this in the context grounding. Okay. So this is that layer. And next thing comes your LLM proxy. So this is the one, this will sit between the UiPath and the actual models. So assume you're using ChatGPT or you use OpenAI or you use Anthropic, whatever it is, right? whatever the models you use from the UiPath. So this LLM proxy is the one. LLM proxy is the one who is sitting between these two. Okay. So this is responsible for routing the request to the correct models. So he is the one who will route your request to the particular model whom you are pointing out to. Okay. And this will make sure that there is no data retained. Okay. So it will make sure there is zero data retention. So he'll make sure your data is not getting stored somewhere and the thing. It will make sure, and all the policies, right, you can enforce it, whatever you want to do. So in general, this LLM proxy, right, you can think that no customer is data, no customer data is getting stored, and we will not use your data for other training. So this you can think of this. Okay. So this is the thing. Now coming back to the model layers. Okay. So here the managed UiPath models. So you can think this as the third party LLMs, or it can be any other AI models. Okay. Whatever you want to access using the secure HTTPS, you can have it scheduled, you can have it secured, and you can use it. And and one more thing UiPath supports, you can see here, right? You can change the model after your automation is developed. You can change it from any model to any model. Like for example, you develop the model using the Anthropic, you can go to the connection center or the integration service. You can change your model to Anthropic now, or the Masto. You can change your model to OpenAI. And I think in general it will give you the flexibility, right, to you use any of the models. Okay. So next comes your platform services. So if you see the platform services, here we have listed a list of platform services. The cloud identity service, see cloud identity service, right? So this is basically the first step in the UiPath platform services, which will help you to authenticate and set up the access control. Yeah. As I said, you right, authenticating, we're getting the user authenticated and the access level, what has to be controlled, that we are setting up here. Yeah. Then if you see the automation ops or the UiPath orchestrator, here you can control your bots, your AI workflows, and everything you can control here. Then if you see the semantic search will basically support your context grounding, right? What I was discussing, you can set up the knowledge base and as to what you can set up here. Okay. Then if you see the Azure thing, the description and all that, no? For improving your performances, you can go with the Redis also, you can go with the APIs, cache memories and everything. So in general, you can put all of this data on the insights again, Azure App Insights, so that you can monitor it on a high level, and you can even control the governance from here. Who is the trainer? So now speaking about in general, now since if you don't want to use UiPath managed models, or you don't want to use the UiPath things, then you can even UiPath gives you an option to BYO. You can bring your own model. Okay, so you're flexible on that. So if you want to bring your own model, yes, you are free to open that. You can bring your Azure API. You can bring your Vertex and whatever it's such, and you can bring it. Okay. Check it. Okay. Then and in general, if you see all of these is data, no? Data is all encrypted in the transit, like TLS 1.2 and plus the extra versions you can take. And also there's encryption on the REST stage also. It is 256-bit ASS encrypted. You can do that. So if I just summarize everything, you have to make sure that, I mean, we are making sure in the UiPath trust layer that UiPath will not directly expose LLM. Okay. So it has to go through a layer called a trust layer, so that this will ensure security. You can set up your governance, you can have your data protected, and the accuracy also will be good. Okay. So I think with all these things listed, right, now organizations can easily or safely use GenAI within the automation without risking their data to be exposed to the LLM model or getting the data leaked. Okay. So I think the next thing, I think what we were discussing was on the AI, the PI, PHI, and the sensitive data masking. How we are masking the data here. So I said you right, how in general, whatever is data we are when we are assume we are using Gen AI activities. If you want to ask, for example, if you want to summarize your email, if you want Gen AI to reply to your email, okay, and if you want Gen AI to extract some of the details, sensitive information from the invoices or the POs, like what is the quoted information, what is the quoted amount, what amount of tender, or something like that. If you want to extract these critical informations, right, I think we get concerned, right, because our data should not be leaked. So in general, this is where your PII, PHI, and the sensitive data masking comes into picture. So if you see, data masking basically means, right, you are scanning your input data, right, and you don't want your data to be exposed. So basically here your masking will come into picture, like you will encrypt it in such a way that there no one should be able to easily decode this information. Okay. So this is again a part of UiPath trust layer. Okay. So what UiPath does it is, in general, it will replace all these things with the safe placeholders before it will actually send this call to the before it will send this actual call to the LLM models. Okay. And we have to remember that masking is not being done automatically. Okay. So this is one important point you have to remember. The masking is not automatically done. Okay. The person or the organization or the developer is the one, or we will decide, we have the control, we have to decide when we have to do a masking and when we have to not do a masking, right? So it is you who will decide when you will do the masking and when you will not do the masking. Okay. So in general, it is not globally enforced for everything. So this will give us the flexibility what we have to mask and what we have to not mask. Okay. So masking, now if I tell you, masking is triggered or masking is enabled only when you when you're explicitly using any of the Gen AI workflows and when you design it in the UiPath Studio, right? So when using the Gen AI in the UiPath, it get masked. Or when you're using in the UiPath Studio, when you're designing your workflows, you can design it. So you have then that is when you will have the control to include the masking. If you don't want your masking in the when you're developing, you if you don't do anything, it will not get masked. If you're doing something, you add the logic and your data will go as you want. If you don't want masking, it will go as it is. Whatever the prompt you're giving, it goes to the LLM. If you want to mask it and give, the after your masking what again, it goes that. Okay. So I think this will be helpful when you're using when in all the enterprises, all the CEOs. I think we'll make sure our hidden information is always hidden. So in that scenario, you can do this. Okay. So this is on the Active application. It's on you. Now coming to the workflow integration. Okay, in the workflow when you're integrating, right, all the masking will basically the part of the workflows. Okay, so you will have an you can actually add activities which has masking. Okay, you have to manually add that step in the UiPath steps when you are dragging and dropping the activities. Then you can add that individual sets. Okay, so this will basically a step. For example, summarize email you're giving, right? So before this summarize step, you'll have an activity that is where you mask and that output you're passing it here. Okay. So you can think in the workflow integration a simple example. You're reading an email, as I said, you can get any document, you can read any email also. Okay. Now you will use an activity to apply this personally identifiable information in PHI. This tag you are masking this. You're applying this PI and PHI masking. Now the output of this, right? This masked data, you are sending it to the OpenAI, or you're sending it to the Azure, or you're sending it to the Vertex, or you're sending it to Gemini. So here, then you will get the process response, right? So now when you're doing it like this, right? So it is preventing your sensitive data exposure, right? First thing is it is preventing your sensitive data. Second thing is now you have a good compliance. It is making sure the compliance is followed. whatever the GDPR you're using, right? So that you can set up. And then one more important point is it is protecting your data before it is going in an external application. So you can think this something as a you can think this as an init stage, okay? Before you do a process, this is your init happening so that your data is secured. Now coming to the next thing is your third party service handling. So here in the third party service handling, like UiPath, no, we here basically we are separating the responsibilities. Okay, so you don't have something called as Gen AI features, whatever we discussed. Right? It will not have that. So it will not basically mask your data. So we have some tools like communication mining or document understanding. Only if you are using these tools from the services to the Gen AI, you can explicitly mention if you want to use it or not. Same as document understanding, right? In document understanding, you can label any document and get any data and out. But here in general, you're not doing any masking here. But before you do this, it happens. So I'm just trying to tell you that there is no default masking in some application like DU and this thing. So if you want masking to go here, you can again decide this. Okay. So you can have the full control. You can have the full control and you can do that. So if I tell you a simple example to if you don't want to forget, now I asked the LLM that my name is Shabir. I'm working in so and so organization. Prepare me a summary so that I can introduce myself to the UiPath community. Okay. Now what I will do is I have to mask my data. Okay. So what I'll tell, my name is Shabir. So if I mask this data, right, on the name field, I can mask it. For example, my SSN will be right. If I tell he'll replace my name with XYZ, okay. So he'll give me an introduction prepared based on my summary, but I'm not exposing my name and my organization name. So I'm masking this data and giving the call to the LLM. So that time now my name is and he'll give me an information response telling my name is SSN, so and so, you tell it, he'll give you all the information. So in this way you can mask all the important fields which you feel may get violated or some numbers same as the amount and everything you can set up this, okay. So in general, if I have to summarize on this masking, right? So masking in UiPath is not automatic. Okay. It is explicit. You have to, if you mention it, it does it, or else it is not do it. So one more important point, what we learned from this is from all the activities that it is again a developer control. It is the developer can control the masking. Okay. And we have to, and this gives us another important point that in the workflow, only it has to be added if you want to do masking. As I told you, right? See, DU will not automatically do masking. But when you're coding in the workflow, you can do the masking and then do it. Right. So the third point will be you have to add it explicitly inside the workflows. Okay. So then it will mention all your, so if you're setting up all these things and then it will make sure Gen AI or whatever the automation is all getting adapted on a mass scale. Okay. So again, if I summarize, this is again all your responsibility that you mask your data. So it is your responsibility that you mask your data. Okay. Now speaking about the context grounding. So I think in general, we spoke on the context grounding, right? So you can think, as I told you, you can think this as an like you have purchased a new device and you want to know what is the warranty, what is the guarantee and everything. So that time you're instructing the LLM that whatever the information you're giving it to me, whatever the information you're giving to me should be limited to this particular document. And that is when context only comes into picture that he'll limit your thing only to the particular document and give you everything from that. Okay. So that's a simple example I'm giving you so that you can remember what's happening. Now, if you see here, the layer, everything, this is again inside fully on the trust layer. So because it was a part of the trust layer, right? If you see the diagram. So context grounding basically focuses on what input we are doing, how we are using that thing to how we are using that input to process on the particular document and give the results. Okay, so basically your ingestion is coming into picture, how you are operating on the data comes into picture, and here where you can use semantic search or you can use RAG search and everything comes into picture. Okay, so if you see here, it is similar to the, you can see right, the injection request you have the query request. They basically here on the first flow, if you see, you have context grounding lines, you have data sources, you have LLM gateway also here, right? So to whenever you want to implement any knowledge retrieval, right? For example, I told you we set up a document from everything from that it has to give. It could be a AI, it could be a AI call, it could be a specific engine, and all that we can have the control. So if you want to implement any knowledge retrieval, so the administrators, right? So the administrator or the RAG controller will set up a security handbook. So assume this like a storage bucket you have in orchestrator. In the storage bucket, you are uploading a document. Okay. Now, how we are uploading, who is uploading, and getting the control limited only to the storage bucket to increase all the index controller. That is when you will see. Okay. So here we are using ingestion. You use an index and an ingest so that in the you have a generative activity, right? You have the gen A activities. So when you use this ingest and the index activity, so this will turn your document similar to a engine. Okay, so now the document what I said you in general, when you the document what where we are referring to get all the information from based on the input. Now the document is converted similar to an engine, so it is like an engine now. Okay, you can think this is of a searchable engine or a dictionary. Okay, yeah, like for example, if you have a dictionary in a config file, you have, okay, let's simply take a config file. Okay, in the RE framework we have a config file. Whatever the config name we give, we get a config value in the workflows. So similarly, assume whatever the document you're uploading as a search engine or you're creating it to a context ground, so that will convert that into a similar to a dictionary or a digital engine. So you can, based on your input, the LLM will search in that particular document and give you the answer. So I think so in general this will work like that. Okay. So again, when you see the runtime, right now, whenever whenever any automatic execution will happen, right? So assume you can take an example of a you can take an example of any chatbot. Okay, think of a chatbot. So you whenever you want to take any of the services, you go to HP for a laptops. You have a chatbot wherever you can think of a chatbot. You ask any user something, right? You just tell hi. The chat, what does the chatbot do? It will tell hi Shabir, welcome. So how he's figuring out your name, and then you ask him a question: is the service center open today on Sunday? So he'll tell you, unfortunately, no, we are not open on Sundays. If it's open, it will tell based on the service. So all this, what is happening, right? This is similar to an agent which is running to a task, no? So whatever all this is happening, right, is all passing through again a trust layer in general. If I tell you an example, okay. So based on the trust layer, that particular backend, whether it was a document or it was their own engine, so that is now your context grounding detail, okay. So it could be a document. So that thing. So in between, before you chat anything on the chatbot, right? So it has to always pass through your AI trust layer. So the things what we discussed, right, in the previous workflow, how the trust layer behaves, how autopilot agents all are going through that several layers, 3 to 4 layers, and all these things are coming here. So when I spoke about the data sources, I told you we can have your orchestrator bucket, you can have your digital engines and all the data sources. Okay, that example. Now, once it is ready, then it is passing the context layer. Only then it is coming to the context ground. Okay. So that is when it has become like an engine where we are putting the ingestion query, we're getting the output. Okay. So these things. So in general, every operation what you're taking here, right? Ultimately, all this will be in general, all this is funneled all by the data residencies with the policies, with the protocols or the data storage. All thing is getting managed. Okay. So with all the policies what we discussed again. So in general, I think probably when we discuss in the coming sessions on a detailed workflow, we can show you how it is actually running. Or with a context grounding example, I think we can take up. I think then the things will be more clear. Okay. So I think that this should be good for now. Okay, before we do that, give me a second. I want to show you this thing. So here, right? So you can go on your tenant. You can explore these options here. Okay. I think on the AI trust layer, I wanted to show you this. See here again in the AI trust layer, right? You have multiple tabs here. You can see you have usage summary, you have audit, you have AI governance, you have autopilot, you have context grounding, you have LLM, you have open telemetry on this. Okay. So if I have to just summarize, right? So here all these AI trust layer, no, this is acting like an admin. Okay, this is like an admin where it is giving you multiple options. So usage summary, this section, no, it will tell you if you're using all the LLMs agents, it will tell you basically, it will give the admin a reference that how many calls are being made, how many calls are being made range by using what model, at what region, if you have multiple regions in your organization, right? So you can see whether a task is using OpenAI, whether it is using Anthropic, whether it is using ChatGPT, at what level, and what is the source. Everything you can get controlled here, okay, and you can monitor it on a high level. Whatever we discuss on the A trust layer, right? You can all configure here, okay. I'll show you this. Okay, then audit also here. Okay, here it will give you the complete. It will give you a complete 60-day window. If you see here, if you can we can even extend this for 90 days. Okay, so here it will give you the complete history of what has been happening at what time period, at what exports, what models were being used, what product features, at what location, what data was exported. Everything, right? You can get it level here on the audit tab. Okay, when you set up all these things. So in the AI governance, if you can set up all the rules here, okay, what kind of policies you want to set up. I'll show you that policy, right? You can design whether what type of features, what for what IXP, for what features, for all the UiPath components, what you can toggle, what for what models you can set up. Here you can see, right? You have the full control here. Okay, I think I would recommend you to go through this and just check how do you want to manage the feeds. Everything you can control here. Okay, you can set up even the control as I was discussing, right? The templates, what you want to use, how you can access, how you can manage the control, whatever we discuss, everything in the pipelines, right? Everything you can control here. So I would recommend you to go through all of these things, these models, and you can set up all these and you can see this. Okay. I think it'll give you a more it'll give you a more idea when you do all this. You can set up your own rules based on your organization, you can set up. So this will give you more idea what we discussed theoretically, right? I think you can set up your own rules and you can decide how things are happening here. Then again, on the autopilot level, also you can control whether you want to give it on a high level, whether you want to enable pre-installation checklist, right? So if you want to give anyone the autopilot license and with what they can do, what and everything you can control here, the admin. So context grounding here, you can set up the context grounding, okay, based on your thing. So when I told you on the tenant level, you can even control the default regions and everything you can control here. So I would recommend you to go through all of these things, at least not all together at once. You can go through You can go through all by once, one by one. Okay. So this will help you understand how things are happening. So requesting basically the data flow whenever you want to set up any request, you can make sure how data is coming, what is the context, and what is the history. Whether you want to save it, then decide a gateway from where it has to go or not. Then you can authenticate the user also. Then you can do some policy checking whether you're policing or policies, that level of control. Then you can see the proxy setup, whether after creating the security, it is transferring or the appropriate. In general, if you want to redirect it to some other, so you can even redirect. You can set up you can set up all levels of control as per your thing. Okay. So that's one thing. I think we can discuss this more on the coming sessions. Yeah, I think the next thing is I think we are all good now. If you have any questions, you can park your questions here, or we can just unmute yourself and we'll see if we can answer your questions here. Okay. And don't I think here we have kept the screen here to you can join our chapters, the Pune chapter and the Delhi NCR chapter. The scanner is on, and we also have the WhatsApp groups. You can use these scanners and join the WhatsApp groups. Okay. So I think if you have any questions, we can go ahead. Guys, is there? Do we have some questions?
Yeah, hi Shabir. I don't see any questions here, so maybe anyone can unmute yourself if you have any questions for Shabir.
I think team, if we don't have any questions, I think we can wind up. Right. Thank you everyone for joining. I think probably I think we'll get started with the next series soon. I think we'll try to bring up some new things on the agentic automation use cases, and we'll see on live how will we try developing the use cases. Okay. So I think let's stay tuned for the next community playlist, and then we can get started. Guys, you want to add something, or we good?
No,
Will
I think
you
we are good.
share the PPT?
Share
So,
the we have shared the LinkedIn IDs. I think feel free to connect if you have any questions for us. I think we'll be happy to help.
so recording will be available very soon, and you can visit
Thank
the
you
same
everyone
page
then.
where you have registered, and
Let's
you will
connect
find the
later.
recording there. Yeah, Shabir. Thank you.
Thank you all.